Hello everyone, Palumbo here. Before we start this video, you're innocent until proven guilty. Today, I am going to ask the question, how reliable was Stephen Carpenter's memory regards the events of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann? Stephen Carpenter, according to what we know, sat on table 206. The McCann group sat on table 211. Table 206, as I've told you in the past, was the table right next to table 211. In April 2008, I think it was, Stephen Carpenter gave a statement to the Leicestershire Police. And he says the following: at approximately 8:30, Jerry and Kate and their group of approximately 10 people were already seated at their table. So, you have a witness, Stephen Carpenter, telling a detective that at 8:30, the whole group, Jerry and Kate McCann and their friends, were seated in the tapas restaurant at 8:30, folks. Yet the group themselves tell us in their statements that they arrived individually. Jerry and Kate first at 8:30, followed by Jane, followed by Rachel and Matthew at 8:50, followed by Russell O'Brien, Jane's husband, at 8:45, followed by David, Fiona and Diane at 9:00. Here we have a witness, Stephen Carpenter, who sat on the next table, that it was that close that he was able to converse what happened during the day with regards to Kate McCann and Jerry McCann. He was that close to their table. But he tells the detective that approximately 10 people were at the table and they arrived at 8:30. Not individually. Plus, instead of 9 people sitting at the table, because that's all we know that was in the group, 9 people, Stephen Carpenter tells the detective there was a group of approximately 10 people. Stephen Carpenter goes on to say, which was so close to ours, it was possible to converse with them. We spoke of tennis, amongst other things. I vaguely remember that Jerry and Kate and other people from the group would leave the table in intervals. So, folks, you have Stephen Carpenter telling the detective that he vaguely remembered that Jerry and Kate and other people from the group would leave the table in intervals. Stephen Carpenter tells the detective, I think it was to check on the children, but I do not remember with what frequency or how many times the people left the table to check on the children. Now, this is why I was asking the question, how reliable is Stephen Carpenter as a witness, folks? His table is right next to the McCann's table. He tells the detective they arrived, the whole group, at 8:30, yet the group said they arrived individually. He tells the detective that there was approximately 10 people sat at the table, Yet the group, there was only supposed to be 9 in the group. And then he tells the detective that while he was sitting there next to the table of the McCann's group, he vaguely remembered that Jerry and Kate and the other people from the group would leave the table in intervals. Now, I am going to ask the question, folks. How would Stephen Carpenter vaguely remember Kate McCann leaving the table? Stephen Carpenter tells us in his statement, this statement, done in April, that he'd left the tapas restaurant between 9:15 and 9:30, folks. So he was gone. Kate McCann tells us in her statement that the first check she did was 10 o'clock. So Stephen Carpenter would not be in the restaurant, folks, for him to vaguely remember Kate McCann leaving the table, would he? Because he would be gone by the time Kate supposedly done her check at 10 o'clock. Unless Kate McCann did her checks before 10 o'clock. Before Stephen Carpenter went away and left the restaurant, then it would be impossible for Stephen Carpenter to vaguely remember Kate McCann doing a check while he was sat at the table. Because she did not do any checks when Stephen Carpenter was sat at that table. The only check she did was supposedly at 10 o'clock. And if Stephen Carpenter tells us he left the restaurant between 9:15 and 9:30, then he would not see Kate McCann doing a check because he'd be gone. But that's what he tells the detective. And that's why I'm asking the question, how reliable was Stephen Carpenter as a witness? Let's go over what he said. Let's get it in, take it in. At approximately 8:30, Jerry and Kate and their group of approximately 10 people were already seated at their table. 10 people, he tells the detective. 9 in the group. 8:30, he tells the group were seated, all of them, yet they themselves, the group, said they came to the restaurant individually. Then he tells the detective he vaguely remembers, and then he tells us that Jerry and Kate and other people from the group would leave the table in intervals. Now, how would he know Kate McCann left the table if he wasn't there to see Kate McCann leave the table, folks? He left at 9:15/9:30, so he might have seen Matthew, Jerry and Jane leave the table. But there's no way he could have seen Kate leave the table because she said she did her check at 10 o'clock, and Stephen Carpenter would not be in the restaurant at 10 o'clock if he said he left at 9:15/9:30, would he? He would only see Kate McCann leave the table in regular intervals if he was in the restaurant when Kate McCann left the table to go and do the check. Now, if he did not leave the restaurant until 9:15/30, and he is telling us that he would vaguely remembers Jerry and Kate and the other group doing checks, then it could only mean that Kate McCann did checks before Stephen Carpenter went away, and Kate McCann did a check before 10 o'clock. Or it could only mean that Stephen Carpenter was wrong regards his timings, folks. Makes you think.